Yeah. Yep.
That human pitch is still required, I think. So, different people, different voices. So, I feel it's very important to hear your voices. And, I think today we are having common problems across the ocean, across households. And I think this is a good time to collaborate and figure out what works well.
Yes, we are. This is a global, not only a global problem, but one that everybody is affected by, and it the we get to work with people in different countries in trying to solve it. What There's nothing more beautiful than that, but if you're thinking in practical terms, no better preparation, because as much as it doesn't seem that life is going to go back to normal, and yes, there will be some changes because we will have gotten used to new ways of doing things, but life is going to go back to what it was, except that everyone is going to be well prepared to working with people across the world in facing problems.
I think that's the beauty of collaboration today. Suddenly we are reaching out, and hopefully the scientists are doing it as much as behavioral psychologists, so that I think if we pool resources, pool brains, put all our minds together, there's some solutions will come.
I am sure of that. I am sorry for the. I don't know at this time. My background is Greek, and right now in Greece, a lot of the economy is based on tourism, and they've done a wonderful job in keeping COVID at bay. But now they're weighing that against, should they open up and what should they do? I don't know what happens this time of year in India. It's a kind of hot time to travel, but have you noticed changes in terms of population mobility, in terms of tourists?
Yeah. This was actually the time when Indians would go to Europe, and most Indians would be in Greece and Italy and Spain at this time. Europe is a very popular tourist destination for Indians, and that is being impacted. I think the worst thing that students and parents have had to face is that this is actually the beginning of holiday time. Probably some schools have just closed today, and they would have been planning to leave. So they're missing out. They're missing out on that travel, and so we have to keep them busy, but make it a little fun for them, so that you know I don't know how to deal with this. I'm a behavioral scientist. My doctorate is in psychology, and I'm a behavioral scientist. So I worry more from the mind and behavior and social impact and the emotion of it all.
How do you think this is going to play out in your experience? That's really interesting.
Oh, hugely impact. I think there will be more, if I may say so, more disruptions in the home, more high tempers. Tempers will run short.
Sure.
So parents and adults both, and children actually, will have to somewhere arrive at a compromise.
Sure. I don't know how many of you are dealing with this. We are dealing with this with our own students who are back. For some people, it's very easy. For some people, especially those who have summer homes, they have a built-in escape. And then there are those who are going back to very, very close quarters with bad internet connections, and they have to fight for that with other siblings who are also in school. And it is creating a lot of stress. So I feel for all of you, because you all, to a certain degree, are going to be, either you're affected personally, or your friends are, or somebody you know is, and that's not easy, because sometimes even if you're not the one affected, when somebody that you're close to is, it weighs down on you as well.
Yes, so we do have some parents I can see. While we are waiting for 9 o'clock, let me introduce you. We have Purvi Shah from Jamnabai International. give a thumbs up sign to show you're there. We have Bijal from DYPS, that's again international school, and she's the counselor there. We have Manvi Bansal, who's heading Delhi, and she's doing a wonderful job with a number of schools. And our anchor for the day is Sonam Mundra, who is managing about 4 schools. And I'm the grandmother of them all, having most of the, like a the trainer now. So most of the school counselors have been trained at some point under me, and I've been there around for almost 40 years. So before the internet, so in 1992, when we used to visit universities to get the hard copy form, I don't know if you remember that time.
Yes, of course.
We used to do the pre-app, and then it used to be couriered, and it used to take 3 months.
Okay, just to interrupt you, Dr. Jain, I think we're just in 5 minutes. So I just want to do some housekeeping. We have about almost 300 participants already. So a quick word, everybody, please keep yourself on mute except for the panelists as and when they speak. If you have a question to post, I would advise you to post it on the chat, and we'll try and incorporate it to the panelists as and when through the discussions. If you have more specific questions regarding curriculum, etc., we will try and answer them, or we can reiterate after the meeting as well. We will post the websites on the chat on the side, so you can get enough information about each university on their websites. And all of them, most of them actually have a great virtual tour. So I know you can't visit them currently, but you can definitely take their virtual tours, which I have found very, very informational.
I see Pamela has joined us from Cornell. Welcome, Pamela, to the panel.
Yeah, I can see Amy as well, and Amy is here as well. Amy has joined us from the University of Berkeley. So, and with 4 minutes, we'll wait a couple of minutes for people to join in, and keep yourself on silent so that this session goes on well. And we'll dive straight in and try and you can add any questions as you might have. Okay, give us 4 more minutes, and we will start exactly on time.
Sonam, do you want their questions in the chat box or elsewhere?
No, so we've already collected some questions already. Some of them have been emailed to you already. So Sonam will pretend she is the student and not the counselor today. So she will be the voice of the students and keep asking you questions. We also have co-hosted Purvi Shah, and Manvi, who also will, if we can't keep pace with the questions, they are right to sort of ask you and the panelists. So instead of doing a regular webinar, students now have done that, and just doing a regular presentations. I thought we would like to hear your, anecdotes, illustrations, of students who made it, and so that makes it a more real interaction, as if you were really sitting in front of them, versus just doing a virtual tour. Most of them, at least from Jamnabai, I know they've already done your virtual tour. We are posting it along as we go. So, so we wanted to be more interactive, more questions answered, because it's really, really difficult and a rare feat to have such illustrious panel of advisors together on one page. So I'm most thrilled. Thank you all the coordinators. I'm sure you worked very hard to spread the message. But I don't think it should have been so hard to get all of them together, because you're a natural cell, 3 of you. So I'll hand it over to Sonam. Please welcome our guest and do a little housekeeping for the last latecomers who just entered.
Okay. So just once again, everybody, hello, hi, I'm Sonam Mundra. I'm your host for today, co-hosted with Dr. Pratibha Jain. I'm a careers counselor, and I'm very pleased to welcome all of you, especially our partner schools, our counselors, number of students joining in from all across India, and abroad as well. We've got a lot of students coming in, joining us from abroad. So thank you for taking time off today and coming here. Quickly, please keep yourself on silent. If you have a question, please post in the chat and we will try and put it to the panelists. Right? So without further ado, can I please welcome...
तेरा वो म्यूट पे कर दे.
Excuse me. Just a minute. I'm just going to mute everybody.
Yeah, don't worry.
Yeah.
In Manvi will do it. Why don't you go ahead? Yeah.
Great. So, first of all, I'd love to welcome Ms. Pamela Tan. Pamela is representing the University of Cornell's admissions office. She's the Deputy Director of Admission, and we're really pleased to have her. She has more than 20 years of work experience in the higher education space, and I have a special connection with Cornell because it seems all my family has been there at some point, from my brother, sister, and even my husband. So my dad always had a T-shirt which says my money and my children both go to Cornell. So
That's wonderful.
So thank you so much, Pam, for joining us all the way from Cornell. We really appreciate you being part of this panel.
I am honored to have been asked, and thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you, Pam, so much. Our next panelist is Ms. Panetha Theodosia Nichis-Pot. I hope I pronounced it correctly. You can correct me. She's Director of International Admissions for the Undergraduate College of Brown University. She's also taught for a number of years, and it's really a pleasure to have you here, ma'am. Especially from Rhode Island. It's a great, peaceful, and a lovely, lovely place, so students should visit in case they haven't. So thank you so much, Ms. Panetha, for being here on this panel today.
It's a pleasure and an honor to be here, and Sonam and Pamela, I a lot of my family went to Cornell too, so
Yeah.
don't take any t-shirts.
So nice to see your face.
We should give more scholarships.
And not the least, can I welcome Ms. Amy Jarek, I hope I pronounced it correctly, who works for the Outreach and Recruitment for the International Dual Degree Program at UC Berkeley. And she's joining us all the way from California, so it's pretty early out there in the morning. So thank you, Ms. Amy, for joining us and coming as part of this panel.
It's a great pleasure. And I feel like I have to say my husband graduated from Cornell.
All roads lead to Cornell.
We seem to have a big Cornell connection here. Yeah.
I taught at UC Berkeley for a summer semester, and just to be able to sit in the dorm, and I thought it would be very warm the whole summer. But surprisingly, I needed a jacket and a shawl most evenings. So people who think it's sunny California, let me tell you, it's usually 12 to 17 degrees most times, even in the summer.
Yes. Under all circumstances, you should assume that June, July are some of the coldest months we'll have in Berkeley. They're beautiful. Days are long, but you will buy a sweatshirt. I bet you'll buy a sweatshirt.
So thank you very much for being here tonight. We really appreciate it. We have had the reach of this program has stunned me as well. We've had 700 registrations, for which we've actually had to open a YouTube live so that more people could participate tonight and ask you as many questions as they could. So we're really hoping that this is a useful panel for everybody, right? Moving on, I would just like to straight dive in, and Dr. Jain can also contribute. So for those who were not introduced earlier, Dr. Jain is the main person who's heading this session. She has 30 years of experience as a counselor, and like she said, she's been a mentor for most of us. So welcome, Dr. Jain, on the panel. And the first question I have for you is that most of our students here obviously have heard of you. You're probably the top 1% of colleges representing in your country. It's an aspirational school for majority of our Indian students anywhere in the world. It's a great, all your campuses are brilliant and are really sought after. So my question to you really is that a lot of you are becoming test optional as well. So a lot of students are looking to come towards you, looking to your percentages which you take in are quite small. So what is it that you look for ideally in a student? Or is it grades? Is it grades and a whole profile? How does students decide that you are the right university for them, and what they should be doing in order to decide that? Can we start with Brown University, followed by Cornell, and then UC Berkeley? Thank you.
Of course. All right. You hear the term holistic so much that you must get sick of it. At least I do. Let's call this qualitative. What does qualitative mean, and why am I calling it that? It is because when we make a decision, it's not based merely on numbers. This does not mean, however, for highly selective institutions that your extracurriculars are just as important as everything else. Make no mistake, for a highly selective institution, your performance in school, as seen through grades, as seen through teacher recommendations, your academic achievements are going to be the cornerstone of the application. Now, that said, most of you, believe it or not, most of you, I think, have a good sense where you have a realistic shot. So I would say that probably most of our applications are viable candidates. And we all can take just a small percentage because there are more applications than there are beds in the university. So there are reasons that we take people, but often the reasons that we don't take them aren't as clear. So remember that we too have our needs. You hear about the proverbial oboist in the orchestra. The orchestra needed an oboist, and that's who got in. But it's not just the oboist. There are players on teams. If we have sports teams, there are departments that need students. We worry about things like, do we want the whole, I don't know, I'm just throwing this out, economics department to be made up with students from India? If that were the case, they could stay in India. So we want to mix it up so that all departments have people from all over, because how are you going to learn if there aren't different ways of thinking, different perspectives? You all are unique, and you bring that to the table. So we're looking to form a community where these differences are going to become the strengths and the furthering of education and knowledge. So how do you make yourself stand out? Do what you're doing. Concentrate on being excited about your studies. Do not see your studies as the way to the next step, but rather as an end in themselves. And if you delight in what you're doing, and often you can integrate that with your extracurricular interest, if you delight in it, then you're going to go far. The extracurriculars are going to help ground you. They're going to help, you're going to see progress in them in a way that you don't in the classroom. So I'm not saying that they're not important. They are important. It's just that by themselves, they won't get you in.
That's a wonderful point, because sometimes children go overboard in extracurriculars. But have you become SAT optional under the current scenario?
We have not. We do require them of everybody. Look, we work with context. The nice thing about a qualitative process is that we can easily pivot to context. So if they're not being offered, I think you're going to be able to take some format online. If you can't, if the center is not available to you, and I suspect it won't be, then do your best with what's available online, and we will work with that.
Great, thank you. Can we move on to Cornell, please?
Absolutely. And what I will share echoes what my colleague from Brown has shared as well, is that absolutely there is a holistic view, but it really is the first piece that Cornell, and I would challenge that most selective institutions in the U.S. would look at, will be the academic component. So really thinking about, look, the rigorous academics that we have, we want every student for whom we offer admission to be successful. So therefore, we're going to be looking at what you've taken in secondary school and looking for that evidence of, yes, we feel confident the student can handle the work at Cornell, and then being able to look at other factors. For Cornell in specific, another factor that is incredibly important would be, can you demonstrate your fit for the program that you're applying to? I can't tell you, I graduated from Cornell and I've worked at different places before coming back to my alma mater, and that say that supplemental essay that you're writing for Cornell is a critical component. And I will say that it could, a well-written, well-thought-out essay, really thinking about and doing your research about the different opportunities in the program of study you want to take advantage of, takes good application and can make it great. So for what it's worth, that's a piece of information to take in if you're interested in Cornell. But here is also the challenging part of the process. Again, I agree with everything that the panel has shared in terms of the quote-unquote holistic process that, again, acting first and foremost for Cornell, the fit piece having been alignment before we look at other parts of your file. But here's the challenging part, is that I could have loved your application. And as the Deputy Director of Admission, I could have fought for you to be offered admission, and still it could not have happened. And sometimes when students will ask me, Pamela, what did I do wrong? I'll look at the files like, nothing. You did everything. You could have been a wonderful person at Cornell, but literally when you have 50,000 spaces and 51,000 applications, and on top of that, I think things that students, to kind of elaborate on what Pamela has already said, is that we are looking to not just select individuals, we're looking to build a class. Right? And what that means is that for Cornell, for 3,000 students that are entering, we're thinking about it like a geodesic dome that has 3,000 pieces. How are all these individual students going to fit together to be able to provide a really robust learning environment that is diverse in every sense of the word? And so I think that is a challenge to keep in mind, is that no matter how strong your application is, we're also thinking about how do all of these pieces come together to have a robust learning environment. And sometimes that's why we have to say, no, not because you weren't great, not because I didn't love you, but just because of the limited spaces in building a class. So for what that's worth.
Great, thank you so much, Pamela.
To sum up again, Pamela also reiterates SAT is not compromised, academics is not compromised, SAT subject tests, you have to be the best you can be, and probably try and be, the academics again takes precedence over everything else. I'm just answering the questions as I go along, otherwise our chat box is also getting saturated. Let's move to the next question.
So Berkeley, please, can Amy throw some light on what Berkeley is doing?
Yeah, sure. So just like my colleagues, it is an academic institution, a very rigorous academic institution to which you're applying. So the hope is that we will be able to find in every corner of your application evidence that you're going to succeed. Because I think, so I'll just share that now I actually live in London, but before I moved to London for 6 years, before I moved to London for 6 years, I was the director of undergraduate admissions at Berkeley. And so I can speak to what Pam was saying about just the deep desire to admit more, but the actual seats available aren't there. It was a very difficult part of my job to be able to say no to so many people who could have succeeded in that space. We just didn't have space. So understanding that many times this is not about something you didn't put in an application, it's about the institution just not having enough capacity. And for University of California, Berkeley, that's a special challenge because it's a public university. So the number one population being served in every aspect of our work is going to be California residents. So the application process is designed, and you will experience this. The UC application is very California specific. It is fully self-reported, and many times you'll be challenged by the fact that they're asking you to fill in boxes that don't fit what you're trying to say. That is okay. You say it in the terms you know, but know that that application is designed primarily to make sure that the academic fit is there for Californians. So in that process, understand too that everybody we admit, whether they're international or California, is adding to our community, just like you've already heard. They're adding a voice to the table in the classroom that we need. We need that. You absolutely also probably will understand that in that space, being able to look at what are already a self-selected set of incredible credentials is challenging. And this year, the University of California has actually decided that because of the pandemic, the testing piece, the SAT with writing, ACT with writing, will be optional. Which means that if you have it, you can send it and someone will review it. If you do not have it, you won't be penalized. And that is for this application cycle and next application cycle. So keep that in mind as you apply. It is the first year this has ever happened. And so it will be a new challenge, but I think it will provide some flexibility for students who have found themselves in a particularly difficult spot in terms of getting access to testing.
Great. Thank you so much for all your input. It's been actually quite useful. And thank you for letting us know that actually California is now becoming SAT optional. So I think a lot of more kids could plan to apply this year who've missed out and taking their SATs. The next question, which is coming up often, is related to the IB program, because a lot of students who are joining us today are from the IB background. A lot of them want to know about what would be an ideal combination. I mean, I know it's a very vague question, and a lot of them students worry about, is it better if I'm applying for an engineering program to have a math and a physics at the higher level, or is it okay if I just have one of these two things? They're highly difficult programs and they're very competitive, but most students feel in India that they need to have the PCM at the HL, otherwise they cannot apply to a Cornell or a Brown. Is this a fact or a myth? If you could just debunk that for us. And can I start with, again, Cornell first, and then moving on to Berkeley, and then Brown, please?
Sure. So this is a challenge, right? Because, and I'm interested to hear what my colleagues say as well, because there aren't, how do I say this? There aren't fixed things, and it would be so much easier if I could say, hey everybody, do this, this, and this outcome will happen. And unfortunately, that's not the case. It is true that when students will ask me, I'll typically say, hey, you need to choose the subjects at the levels that have greatest interest to you, and that will set you up, right? And I could also say that it is true that for students that might be aiming for something like our engineering program, in order, again, to be successful in the rigor of the programs that are available, I'm going to ask you to take rigorous math. So perhaps that's going to be important. And it is, having physics somewhere in your curriculum is going to be important for engineering programs. But I think that it's almost like putting the cart before the horse. If doing rigorous math isn't something that you want to do, maybe the Cornell engineering program isn't the right fit. Right? So I'd like you to start first with, let me choose the things that I'm very interested in, that I really think that I would love to delve into in the IB program, knowing that hopefully that'll help sort out the best places for you to fit in terms of the university process down the line.
Great, thank you.
I completely agree, and I think that one of the challenges at Berkeley is that even though it's one university with so much diversity of amazing things to study, many students are interested in applying only to the College of Engineering, and the College of Engineering is a small college. So like we said before, the number of seats are limited. We also offer math and physics in larger liberal arts programs, which have more seats and could still get you into amazing engineering graduate programs and great jobs. So keep that in mind as you navigate the application process. If you do choose to apply to engineering at Berkeley, you have to be prepared for that first week in the classroom. And I don't mean that it suggests you have to have studied the exact same things that the people sitting next to you did. I just mean that academically there is an expectation from faculty in engineering that if you've been admitted to that program, you actually have a deep curiosity and interest in math and science. And so, however you can exhibit that in your application is what we're going to be looking for. It might be in higher level courses, it might be in extracurriculars, it might be in the writing, but something has to point to the idea that in that first week, that spark will be there in the classroom, and that's the spark that will help build confidence, that will help you be successful. And I think it manifests itself in many, many different forms. So certainly academic strength can be measured through higher level courses, but also know that there are other ways to demonstrate that to us as well, particularly if you're thinking about a very specific program like engineering at Berkeley.
So we also have a lot of A-level students as well. So I'm guessing whether they are doing A-level or the Indian board or the IB, what you're recommending is within that. So A-level, just one question that is coming up from Ms. Leena, who's the coordinator for an A-level school. Would you like to see for engineering again, physics, chemistry, maths, or physics, maths with another humanities subject? What appeals to you more?
So
I mean, it's not a very perfect answer, but would you like to see one science, one maths, and one humanities? Or like India, for engineering, we need physics, chemistry, maths?
So for A levels, so let me answer this broadly. First of all, I agree with everything. I don't have anything much different to say than my colleagues did. You do need higher level maths if you're going to be an engineer. You're going to need it at one point. So either higher level or A level maths needs to be in there, and you should have at least one other science. Now with the A level, you are limited to 3 or 4. I know some people, some superstars out there take 5, but okay, you're limited to 3 or 4, and some of you may be looking at schools in Great Britain as well that are going to be a little bit more rigid in what they want to see. We understand that. You don't have the ability to spread out as easily as you might in another curriculum. Do have math, do have another science, a physical science, and that's going to be the best. If you are in the IB, I think the same goes with engineering. It doesn't mean all is lost if you don't have that, because sometimes we come in and out of our interest, but you do want to have, the math needs to be in there. It does for economics as well. And if you have had a change in heart, then what you need to do is you need to explain what has happened so that we understand that you have been thinking about it.
My co-host, just a second. The co-hosts need to. There is some lady who's coming in, and I don't know. She's not an invited guest. Please find a way to have her exit.
Oh, a Zoom bomb! How nice.
Yeah. So. She is hacked. There is my phone is being hacked as well.
She's to be congratulated for being by a bookshelf. That's good for her.
So I don't know how to remove her. So will any of the co-hosts first find out how to remove her?
We'll get to that.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, you know, I think you can pay attention to her. I think the message is a very good one that you should be by your books and you should be reading. So I think it's very opportune that she showed up to show us the way. For the rest of you, I think that if you're applying to a school that at Brown, we have an engineering division. It is the oldest in the Ivy League and the third oldest in the country. Yet when you apply, and this is an important thing, you are applying to Brown University and stating an interest. Still, you need to back that interest up with classes that pertain to it. If engineering is a possibility, but right now you're thinking, gee, I would rather do French studies, go ahead and apply. If the day before you decide you want to do engineering instead, you can.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. I'm still struggling.
We are not
to
able
have
to
this lady
stop
removed.
this. I think somebody has hacked the system.
Yeah, so please, the co-host, please do what you can. Purvi and all the IT savvy guys. So we will go on we were warned about this if we opened it too big, but we had the option of, because we had 700 registrations, we went in for the bigger room, which lost us a little control over the guests. We'll hope to sort it out. But anyways, the conversations will continue. So what I really want, I know that there is no perfect answer on this, but our as Indians, we go overboard to get students. They must excel in academics, they must excel in the SATs, and to a certain extent, they must also excel in what should I say, extracurriculars. So they will be doing sports, theatre, dance, music, and maybe play polo and do a service leadership. So what is your take on it? Is it quality or is it quantity? Maybe start with UC Berkeley and move on to Brown and then Cornell.
Sure. So I will just start by saying that one of the things that we talk a lot about with students who are thinking about activities is just, again, finding something that sparks your curiosity, maybe finding something that to you, especially when it comes to activities outside the classroom, what are the things that you sustain them because you want to? You read them because you want to, because they bring you some level of joy, satisfaction, life lessons, something that you can share with us that helps us understand what your motivation is. And I say this with much experience. Just because you've done that exercise in your home does not mean that anyone expects you to do that same exercise when you get to campus. Unless you're a recruited athlete or you are that tuba player that everyone's looking for, you actually have so much freedom. And what we find that is students who have found not just an exercise to build a resume, but have actually found balance and can look for things that bring them joy and meaning, they engage in our campus in a very different way. They are more successful because in the classroom and outside the classroom, they find ways to channel an energy that is theirs, is unique, and is adding to the community. So I think we live in a world where everyone is probably overdoing it a bit, right? But the reality is the competition is there. And so the best that I can advise is that as you continue to fill your time, find time for yourself, make sure that you're getting sleep, that you're eating well, but find things that are meaningful for you. And in that search for meaning, you might fall over some things that, that wasn't it, and that's okay. You can still add those to your resume. But the real short list of activities that that are meaningful is what we're hoping. You can look at our application and you can say, aha, those are the 4 things that I'm going to put in that application that are really meaningful for me. And if someone asks me why, I know what to say. And it's not just because they'll get me into college.
Purvi, one of my counselors, had something specially to ask you because Purvi, would you like to ask Amy something? She's UC Berkeley.
Yeah, hello. Actually, a common question that we get from a lot of the high school students is how to go about approaching the essays for universities such as yours. There's a general worry that if they get very bold or very creative, it might actually hamper the chances of admission as opposed to just being an essay that helps them stand out. So is there any light that you can share on what they can do to stand out in their essays, but some definite, yes, you can try this, or no, you shouldn't be doing this?
Sure. So writing for the application process is 2 things. One, it should be reflective exercise, all about you. But it also needs to be answering the question. And for the UC system a few years ago, we actually narrowed those questions down a bit so that it's less of a creative writing exercise and more of pretty direct questions that we want fairly direct answers to. You can certainly be creative. You have some words there to to work with. You can add as much context as you can with making it fit. But I think you're probably, for the UC, you won't find that you can just cut and paste things from the Common App the way that some people might. You might want to really think about reading some of the guidelines that have been posted on the University of California website. They're great tips. They were designed with the admissions directors to really get input from the admissions offices about what they're looking for, what they hope to see. And really, each of those questions, while the question could draw similar answers from each person who answers it, our expectation is that it's going to be a reflection of who you are. And honestly, if you're a funny person, write something funny. And if you're not funny, do not try to write something funny, right? Like step away from that. If you are a brilliant writer and can be creative and can convince us that you've answered the question in poetry, by all means do. But that's a rare example, right? So you have to know that that's who you are when you do the writing. So my number one tip is to go to the University of California website, search for personal insight questions, and there are multiple tools there where you can see thought processes about how to answer those questions efficiently and effectively, and also know that it is a separate process than answering the prompts on the Common Application, even though it might be convenient to combine the two. It does have a very different angle for the University of California. Is that helpful?
Yeah, and I think all counselors love the UC application. So we don't need to upload reference letters. We don't need to. So the student has to do a lot of work. So our job is guidance. But, it's very appreciated. It's a very comprehensive application. And from there, I would probably ask Brown to add to it, because you have also a number of essays which seem to deep dive into the student's mental side. And how do we help him?
All right, first, you students, you have world-class counselors here. You have wonderful counselors who are going to help you through this process. Go to them. Do not go to outside agents. Now, can I always tell that you've gone to an outside agent? No, I can't always tell. But after all, the essay is intended, it has two points. One is we want to get to know you. We want to hear your voice. We can tell how you think through the way you present. If I admit somebody who's written in someone else's voice, you're not. We don't want Cyrano de Bergerac applying for somebody else here. We're going to be admitting somebody that's not you, and that's not the point. The other thing is that doesn't really help you, because if you get into the wrong type of school, you're going to be unhappy. Finally, if I can tell that you have gone, or suspect even, that you have gone for this kind of help, you might not get in, and you will never know why that was. I had a student who called me earlier this year, and she said, "Are you sure that you denied me?" And I'm thinking, yeah, I know you put that major down because you thought it was going to impress me. I know that you went to an agent. In fact, I'm pretty sure I know who the agent was, because I've gotten used to that style. So make sure that it's your voice, because it is your voice that I want to hear. I know, and this ties into all of the extracurricular that Amy answered so beautifully, I know, having done this for 30 years, that you all want to prove that you've done it. Particularly, I see with files from India, when it used to be paper, they used to be that thick, and people wanted to prove that they did all sorts of things. I know that that's the tendency. It's a tendency for all of us to want to tell us everything. The student who has been successful, I'm thinking of a student that we admitted from Kolkata, and she talked about the moment when she had a kind of epiphany. We don't all have this, but what was that moment? She looked out her window and she saw somebody who was very poor, a young girl, and she thought, there's this wall that separates us, but there's also a world that separates us. And she had a realization in that moment that moved her so much that she talked about it. I think you all have something like that. It may not be that exact experience, and it may sound like it is often something like, walking down the street or looking out the window. That, you describe that moment, and I think it's going to move us. It's going to turn our heads. You describe the moment, perhaps, maybe it's not that. Maybe you want to introduce something in India that we're not aware of. It might be everyday for you, but not for us. And you have drawn a picture that allows me to engage my senses. I can see it, I can hear it, I can feel it, I can taste it. That is going to be the essay that moves us. It's perhaps not the most academic piece, and yet it is, because it shows us that you know how to think and how to present. So please think about this, put a lot of yourself into it, and you are going to be successful. If it's not the school that you wanted, it may be at the school that actually, without knowing, you did want, because I firmly believe that the right thing happens.
So that brings me to the next question to Cornell, to say that, today students are very taking videos, taking photographs, and they have a lot of visual pictures to paint about their experiences. Is it possible to send videos? If they send videos or gave you a URL to their website, would you really look at it, or it has to be conveyed in text only? Because every year we have this question that, oh, I've made a phenomenal video, I've made a phenomenal, I have a photographic evidence of my story of before and after. So, but currently the applications don't really allow visuals. But if a student sends it as an extra, he sends it as a URL or in his resume, will you look at it? Or is it, oh, it's not part of my context, I really don't have time to see extras?
It's a great question, right? I think that I'd like to say...
I think each panelist should answer that at some point.
Absolutely.
I see all of you thinking about it. Yeah.
I would absolutely make sure that anything that you wanted to share with a selection committee was in the actual required parts of the application. And to that end, really thinking about, this is so critically important to me. Where do I highlight it on, let's say, the common application or in the UC application, right? It could be, all right, this extracurricular is very important to me. How do I make sure to maximize that space to really talk about it? Do I feel confident my counselor is going to talk about this in her recommendation? Really be strategic about the different parts to maximize their use. And if this is something that's important to you, think about that as something to weave into your essay. Your essay doesn't have to just be, think about all the different details you want to be in there. And if there's something that you can have a topic, but then weave this detail into, that is going to be helpful for you in the process. In terms of additional pieces, like you said, videos or URLs to share with us, there is at least for the Cornell application, an opportunity for you to upload additional information after you submit the main parts of your file. But listen to what I said, this is supplemental, optional information. Make sure that the things you want us to know are in the file, and then I cannot promise that the optional materials will be reviewed, but it'll be part of your file, and if there's something in there that the selection committee wants to take a look at, they could, but the decision will be primarily based on the required parts of the application.
So the required parts should be substantial and comprehensive, rather than saying this little piece I was not able to put in, so hopefully you depend on luck that the officer. So I get the message, and I hope all the people attending this get the message. Whatever you want to say must be part of the essential mandatory requirements, and there is quite a lot of it. There is the activity sheet, there is the Common App essay, there are supplement essays. So there is quite a lot of place to put in what you think is important to your application. So don't depend on the extras. Thank you so much. And I would go back to my panelists from Berkeley and from Brown to share your opinion on the extras. We go crazy. Parents bring us this bigger file and they get very upset if we say, look, it's not needed, or there's no need to courier it. They feel we are not doing a good job as counselors because we are eliminating some very important aspects. But if it is important, we are happy to do it. So if it is important to you, it's important to us, and we are happy to walk that extra mile. So that's the voice we want to hear, and maybe improve our own counseling. I have a number of counselors here, and I always remain the teacher, because if my counselors learn, they are going to impact 100 students every year. So please be candid about it and tell us exactly what we should do.
I agree with Pamela completely. The required, and she said it beautifully, the required parts of the application are the ones that we're going to pay attention to. If we want, we might go to the others, but we may never get to it. So there's a big closet in our admission office. It's known as Panatha's Closet, and it's known as Panatha's Closet because all of you send papers that you've written and things that you've done. And there are so many of these that I can't possibly go through them. And I put them in this closet, and so that's why my boss has named it after me. I want to pay attention to the parts that require. Now and then, if I'm very interested in an applicant, I may look at something, but the chances are that I won't. So I would just concentrate on the parts that we've asked you to submit. The other thing, letters of recommendation. No, we do not need a letter from Mr. Modi. In fact, that's annoying because unless he's taught you, but I don't think he has. I've never heard of anybody saying that he's a teacher in your schools. I don't need a letter from the Prime Minister or the Pope or whoever it is. We want to hear from your teachers. They're the ones who can tell us, and they will tell us things that you didn't think to tell us, of how you've gone beyond, of how you have dealt with that lab report, of how you tackled the math problem, of your analysis in a literary work. They're the ones who are going to impress us.
Thank you. That was most relevant, and again helps our job, because we have to eliminate and say no, it has to be school teachers and not really anyone outside of school. Amy, would you like to add to that?
Sure. I'm just going to add two behind the curtain moments for you. One is that for every application that's being read at Berkeley, the reader has about 8 minutes to get through every bit of it with much care and thought. So understanding that just reinforces everything you've already heard. The required parts are what we're trying to digest, and I think that's really important. The UC application actually is pretty straightforward. You can't attach things. They don't. If they're going to ask for something, it's going to come later and not for everyone. So most of what you need to pay attention to is how you're filling out that UC application, understanding that the person who reads it is going to pay absolute attention to every bit of it that's on that document. That's their job. But they're going to do it in about 8 minutes. And they're going to make critical decisions based on their training and their skill and what you put in that document. The other behind the curtain moment, I'll say, similar to Panatha's Closet, I used to work at the University of Virginia, and I was in charge of making sure all the applications got processed, right? Everyone read it, everyone got their decision. In that space, we had just shifted to what is now pretty much everyone's reality, a virtual application, a workspace that is no longer a piece of paper. So we put them in a box, and that box would sit in a corner until the end of the review was done, and we had to clean up every summer, and we would go through that box, but not because it was helping us make decisions, simply because we felt bad that we had this box of things that belonged to people, and we didn't know how to return them safely, right? So understand that we are very, very committed to reading what we are supposed to read and using it to make the very best decisions we can. But beyond that, you shouldn't expect admissions offices to have either the capacity in terms of time or maybe even the technology to capture everything that you want to send them.
May I add something? I feel very badly.
Please. Yes.
I feel very badly because I think you all, what Amy just beautifully said is right. You have put hours to do that. It doesn't mean we have to see it. Do it for yourself. Do it because you enjoy it, because it's a good thing to do. Take pride in it. Don't feel it has to be a part of your application, though. I am, like Amy, very impressed with a lot of the things you all have done. But at the end of the day, it's not going to be the thing that gets you, or rarely is going to be the thing that gets you into the class, because we only have that limited amount of time.
So another question that some are asking is that if they are already doing A-level and IB programs, is then advanced placement, simply because it's an American exam, necessary, or does the A-level and IB program is sufficient? And so who should take the APs?
Yeah, I would say from the
Cornell.
yeah, if you're taking IB, that is more than sufficient. If you're taking A levels, more than sufficient. In my perspective, there'd be no, especially since we will extend advanced placement, meaning for both IB and A levels. For me, there's in that situation no compelling reason for you to take an AP exam. Sometimes I will see students do it because they are really interested in one topic that they're currently not studying. So they may want to say, hey, I'm self-studying to do X, Y, and Z. And that's interesting for me. But it's definitely it's not something that I would require.
I think you give the wrong impression when you go to an exam room and take every exam room. You heard about the kid, I think he was in Pakistan or in Bangladesh. He took I think all 26 A levels. You know what happened? He didn't get in. He got A's on all of them. He didn't get in because the impression that he gave was all that he cared about was taking exams to prove something. The way you're going to prove, and this is where the qualitative comes in, is by sticking with your curriculum, doing your very best, and developing that other side of yourself.
Yes, so then whether it's any curriculum, whether Indian or international, be judicious when you are taking extra challenge. You should be able to cope with it as well as show versatility in other areas. So it's not a one hat fit all because your neighbor could do it doesn't mean that you need it. For those from the Indian systems who have joined us, especially from the higher secondary, since I'm also a counselor at one of the junior colleges, yes, I do recommend APs for the junior college students just to show more challenge. So there is a difference. It's not, again, some, as our panelists have rightly said, A-level and IB may not need it, but maybe an HSC, ISC student may benefit from it. It's not mandatory, but you may benefit. So take a judicious call, stretch yourself, and at the same time, show versatility. Amy, would you like to add to that?
I think my colleagues have covered it. I feel like test taking is not what we hope you're going to specialize in when you get to our university.
Yeah. Okay, another quick question to the panel is from another person who's written in today. Will 2021 fall admissions be tougher than before because it will have to accommodate a lot of students from 2020 pass out batch as well? So a lot of people who are deferring offers or cannot make it this year, would you be accommodating them, and will that then impact the 2021 admission cycle? Can we start with Pamela and then Vanessa and then Berkeley, please?
Sure, I can share with you what we're seeing from Cornell's perspective. The number, to be completely honest, it is not clear exactly what the mode of instruction will be for the fall and for 2020-21 at this point. We are hoping to come to a decision for that by the end of June. And there's a lot of considerations in terms of do we start the semester later? Is there an online component and an in-person component? How do we make sure that our students are safe as well as our surrounding community is also safe? So much research, and I'm sure is also being done at all institutions to think about safety at the same time as balancing with that with quality of life. So I think that at this point, because we are not sure what's happening, 100% what's happening in the fall, even though we are planning for on-campus instruction, at this point the number of students who have deferred for Cornell is no greater than it has been in the past years. right? So let me make sure I'm articulating it correctly, that have requested deferral and have been granted deferrals are no greater or less than they've happened in the past years. Now, can I look ahead and see some of the stumbling blocks that may be ahead for students who, for example, are international and unable to secure a visa in time? I'm not sure what the impact will be at this point, again, May 29th at this point. Could there be an impact if it turns out that Cornell's mode of instruction is radically different than we've planned for, and that students want to defer? That might be a different story. But right now, at least in terms of where I'm sitting at this point, it's too early to tell. And so I know that this is anxiety producing. My goodness, a lot of us, in terms of our colleagues, will have websites where we're talking about, hey, for Cornell, here's our response to the novel coronavirus. Here's what's happening in terms of campus reopening that's available to the public. And I believe a lot of the universities, at least that I've seen in the U.S., have something similar. So that's the best place to get. If you just do a search for Cornell coronavirus, you'll be able to see what the plans are and how they're unfolding. But I can imagine that this is also stress-inducing, right? What happens if huge amounts of students defer, and what happens? I guess my advice for you is that there's so many things right now that are out of your control, and this is one of them, right? Whether or not there's going to be a slight impact in terms of admissions for students for fall 2021 is something that's out of my control, and unfortunately out of the counselor's control and out of your control as a student or as a parent or as a family member. So I would encourage you to redirect and think about what are the things that are under my control. Right? What are the things that I feel like are things that I could put my all into an application to craft the best possible application I can, given the advice that you're hearing this evening? So, one person's perspective.
So I think we have similar planning going on in place, although we're going to look at defers on a case-by-case basis. Currently, as Pam said, we have about the same number of people requesting deferral, and if that goes up, we're going to look at the reasons. If there are seniors out there right now, I would encourage you to embrace what the university offers, only because what else are you going to do? I think there is some beauty in helping to shape this. I'm going to tell you something that impressed me a few weeks ago. The South Asian Students Association at Brown wanted to reach out to do an outreach for anybody who was interested. I didn't know what the makeup was going to be because the South Asian Association includes Indians from India, it includes Indians in the United States, it includes people from other countries. It ended up that the people who were running this were mostly from India. So it was 5 p.m. in Providence, and I said, you guys, where are you right now? And they said, oh, we're in Mumbai, we're in Delhi. And I said, isn't it like 2:30 in the morning over there? And they said, yeah, but we felt it was important to get up. And they talked to... that was their decision. I didn't ask them. I would never ask anybody to get up at 2:30 or 3 in the morning. They said that they had classes that they could handle. They were in the evening, but they weren't at some ungodly hour. And that they felt the community was so important, they were finding a way to connect with everybody else. And I thought these kids are dealing with this much more creatively and maturely than I am, or that any of the adults on campus are. So I invite you to join in that effort because you are going to help to shape the future. For those who are juniors, we are aware and do not want to lose out on the talent in the junior class. So we are going to make sure things happen. With the visas, remember that what you should do is accept the appointment that you're offered. So if it's offered in October, take it. And then once schools announce what they're doing, you can ask for an expedited, not emergency, but expedited appointment. And they're going to try, I think the State Department is going to try to accommodate you. I mean, I don't know, but messages that I'm getting is they're worried about this too. They're trying to figure it out just the same way all of us do. They don't have the answers. So work what offered and be flexible. This is going to be an exercise in learning how to be flexible.
Thank you.
Amy?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that every single muscle in everyone's body on campus has been working to try to think about how both physically and mentally and quite frankly just the psychological pieces of this are huge, but how will we be able to build a community, make a community, and also, and this is one person's job, but it's important, count them. How do we count everybody? Are you coming? Are you here? Are you online or not? It's a new challenge, and I don't actually think at this point anybody could predict how that's going to change or not change next year's process. I think that at this point, everyone is moving forward with the idea that there will be a day when everybody is on campus. We're moving forward with the day that hopefully everyone who was interested in being on campus will want to still be on campus. And that the quality of our education is not going to diminish because of this. It might actually get stronger. And the students on our campus will have lived through something that will create a different kind of campus community, a different kind of campus conversation. So we're excited about it. I do appreciate, though, that there's so many unknowns. And as you've already heard, they're just, nobody I know, including myself right now, feels like they have control. And I think that that is a scary feeling. But I guess all that I can keep saying and mean it with all my heart is that you're not alone, that the processes that are in place for you right now, if you're applying for the next round, you should follow those paths. Follow them with the same heart and meaning that you would have before, and understand that a university is going to reach out to you the minute they have news about how it might impact your process or the university's process. So I am. These are strange times, and I will say that that we used to do scenario work to try to imagine what's the worst thing that could possibly happen that would make it hard for us to build our class. This never actually came to mind. It didn't, right? We didn't do this scenario, and so we're living it while we do it. And
thank you, Amy. Thank you so much, Amy. And one final question, which has come up, is so a lot of students do, because this cycle, a majority of the schools are going to be closed till August, maybe September, depending on which regions open up in India, as and when. A lot of students who are looking at the cycle 2021 will start their application processes, which they will go out by November, December, and they'll actually plan to use their summers very well. They had planned their internships, they had planned to do a project, they had planned the whole process, which is now not happening. So the question is, a lot of my students are doing Coursera online courses. How important do you think just the courses in itself are? Do the students really need to get the certificate for it? Or is it more the learning from it? So if they are learning and then do they apply it in some manner, would you prefer seeing that versus just the certificate that they're collecting? And would you recommend a virtual internship? So for a student getting virtual internships, or they're getting some sort of ability to showcase their research, or at least explore a subject further in this manner, even within their own family businesses or with through people, would you recommend that they do that in this time, considering that we might not be open for another month and a half, and they might lose the cycle of summer, primarily where they had planned to do things? Can I start off with Pamela first, followed by Brown, and then Amy? Thank you.
Sure, absolutely. And much like my colleagues have said, yes, these are unusual times that we could have never predicted, right? And here's what's interesting. All of us, right? Myself here in Ithaca, Panatha in Rhode Island, Amy from where she's sitting in London, you in Mumbai, we're all in the same situation. I have been in my home with my husband and my 13-year-old son, and watching what that's been like to have a student of myself struggle in this remote learning environment, unable to do sports, unable to do things he's interested in. So for what it's worth is that all of us, this is not some theoretical knowledge, we all have personal knowledge about this time is terrible. I'm so sorry that we're all having to do it, and I know what the stress it must be for students who are thinking, gosh, if I don't do something, that's it. I won't be able to get into university. And here's the thing, all other students around the world are in a similar situation. So for what it's worth, kind of take that in and know that we will take that into consideration in the process. We will know that has been an unusual first start of 2020, and will continue to be unusual leading into the summer. And so if you're asking questions about should I take online courses? Should I do virtual internships? I would ask myself, especially if the answer to that is not, I'm doing this because I think the colleges want this, as opposed to I'm doing this because I'm really interested in the subject matter, or I'm doing this because this is one way that I can contribute in some way that's something that's interesting to me. Go for it. But if you're unable to do that, I think that's okay too, right? And I wonder what my other colleagues are thinking.
Thank you so much, Pamela. Vanessa?
I'm going to piggyback on that, and I'm going to come down harshly. I think you all are thinking of this in the wrong way. This is not a time, you're thinking in terms of ticking something off that a college wants to see. Don't think, as Pamela said, think about it in terms of what you want to do. I'm going to offer a couple of suggestions. This is the time to read. People are not reading enough. We no longer have common frames of reference. I was disappointed many years ago when I came to India, and I was discussing the Ramayana with a group of students, and they said, "Oh yeah, we read that in third grade." Well, okay, what you read in third grade is not Valmiki because you couldn't handle it in third grade. You need to read it. It's part of your history. It's part of your literature. It's part of it. I read it before I came to India, and I'll tell you something. It changed my life. It changed my life completely. So, okay, I'm a class assistant. I like epics, but the fact that it was so related to other literatures around the world was moving to me. I went to Amritsar to chase this a little bit. You need to do that too. Know your own literature. Read Amartya Sen if you want something more modern, but don't leave off the ancient as well. Know your literature. Know other people's literature. That's the only way to get to know a culture, including your own. Yeah, I told you, my background is Greek, and in Greece they do the same thing. Uncle Homer wrote an epic, and Uncle Plato did philosophy, and so I don't need to do it. Don't think that way. This is something that you have a chance now to read. So if the internship is not interesting because you didn't want it to be online, if the course isn't that interesting to you and you're just doing it to fill your time, think about what you might want to read, and only read good stuff. If you do have internship and course opportunities and they are exciting, to reiterate what Pam said, then absolutely do them. There are online options. I have a student who needed to do something for medical school, and she is doing a hotline and working with underprivileged people who have no other resource except to talk to her on the phone. There are lots of ways to think creatively about this, and the best thing is you will be thinking creatively because you have no choice.
Thank you. That's really meaningful. Yes. Amy, would you like to add?
Yeah, I'll just quickly add that I agree that the online options are greater than they've ever been. There's so many things that you could do online right now. That doesn't mean that you should do them all or that you have to do them all. My exercise, since we've been sitting closer to home, is I have decided, it sounds very old-fashioned, but I get offline and I simply write thank you notes. Thank you notes that I should have written years ago. And those thank you notes are for things that were meaningful for me, and maybe the person never knew, but I want them to know now. And I'll just say, if I were applying to a university, many of those thoughts and moments could be something that I could then add into my college application, because those are those reflective moments. So if you can get offline and find yourself something that will add value to your application, that is just as beneficial as if you were taking an online course. I do think that, having said that, everybody who could put their summer programs online. And so if you were considering doing a summer program, the real value is often living on a college campus as a high school student and understanding what that feels like. Obviously, we can't offer that But if you want to explore what it's like to learn from one of our professors, those summer programs are mostly online. They don't require visas, obviously. They would require you perhaps to stay up in the middle of the night, depending on which university you chose to take courses. But I do appreciate that more options are out there. It doesn't mean you have to take them all. And you can find things that are very low-tech, old-fashioned ways to build your confidence as you move into the application process.
Great. Thank you so much, panelists, for answering these amazing questions and with poise and with honesty. I think that was the key thing, that you guys have been very candid, very honest, and given very direct answers which are not always available on the websites. I really appreciate all the answers that you've given. And quickly, because I know we're almost out of time, in fact we're over, can you all just give one last piece of advice to students, even if they're not applying this year, even if they're looking at other countries or are going to be in 10th grade looking forward, just moving forward, what is your one piece of advice that students should consider, just in general related to education, higher education? Amy, would you like to start, and we'll move to Vanessa and then end with Pamela, please?
Okay, so I think I'm actually going to offer two. One is very clear, we've already said it before, just follow the directions. If there are directions put out in front of you for this process, for the next process, whatever that is, grad school, applying for jobs, just follow the instructions, follow the process, and trust the process. Trusting the process is another really important piece of this. We find that in the U.S. admissions process, there is very little trust in the work that we do right now, but I am here to tell you that everyone I know who does this work does it because they care deeply about the students, and they care deeply about building a class that will create the right community on the campus. So follow those directions for the process, trust in the process, and then if you can, I know it's hard, especially now, just find something to have fun, giggle at something. There has to be something that you, through this process, as stressful as it feels, find something that just makes you smile, makes you feel happy, because in the end you are going to be matched up with a university, and you will have a future that will be quite fulfilling. But you don't want to look back at this time as a time when you followed all the directions and you never had any fun. So follow the directions and think of some ways that you can enjoy it as well.
That's great advice, Amy. Thank you so much. Panifa?
I would like you all to let loose and develop that joy in education. Those of you who show joy and those of you who show humanity are going to be successful, and delight in that which is irrelevant. Sometimes theoretical subjects seem irrelevant, and so what? Develop that delight. The relevant stuff, the practical stuff, you'll be doing the rest of your life. Make this an interesting place to live. You need it right now. You need this to be interesting.
Just very briefly on my end is trust your counselors. These are professionals who have really watched not just one student, but many, many students through various cycles go through this process. They have been in touch with people like myself to be able to get the right answers, to be able to guide you appropriately, and they are a gold mine of information. So for what it's worth, I think that I cannot stress and emphasize that they are on your side. And if they're telling you something, they're not making it up. It's based in truth. So for what it's worth.
Thank you. You make our job worthwhile. It's good to be. Yes, I think the message I gave, just like you are saying, just be honest to yourself. If you are good at something, don't pretend to be another person simply because that senior got into UC Berkeley last year, so I should just duplicate his resume. So that is what we get a lot. Oh, this is the successful resume, so I should do exactly the same thing. So our main job is to say, be honest to yourself, try and do things you enjoy, you're likely to excel in them, and that's the story that makes the best narrative. And Sonam, as I'm reading, I'm seeing that some people have a curated list of things to do this summer. So if you are really keen and you've got what we call Coursera, now we are seeing Coursera sort of fatigue. You do need that human being to hold your hand, to ask questions. Then do watch out for Sonam and Manvi. They will be sharing a curated list we have put together from people who are doing live resume building things, a variety from design, from art, from music, from a theatre workshop, from a creating writing workshop, a virtual internship, an entrepreneurship and leadership. So a lot of things for you to do. Don't panic, and it will work out. You will get to a university where you are a good fit. Don't panic.
It's an imagination. You can live in your own world, in your own head, and you can explore the world through that. So all my gaming students, please look for another alternative. I'm sure gaming is a lot of fun and it's a huge part of your life. But pick up that book or old classics and your old myths, because we have it right now. It's happening right now in India while we're in lockdown. All the old stories are coming back. Spend time, watch them. I think my brother actually learned more about Mahabharata being in Cornell than so I think he went there to rediscover his roots before he actually discovered them here. So you don't know which part of the world what you can learn from. But I am so grateful to this panel who's been here and the kind of advice that you've given our young students, our parents, our counselors. We really, really appreciate your time and the effort you've taken to come here and really spend with us here tonight. Thank you so much for all your time, Miss Amy, Miss Tanaka, and Miss Pamela, and Dr. Jen. We really appreciate your time. Thank you.
A pleasure. Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Deeply
appreciate
all of you. Yeah. Deeply appreciated by everyone. I'm just reading the chat box. I'm sure you can too. It's full of gratitude from various parts. We have somebody who joined us from Costa Rica.
Thank you very much.
Keep well, everybody.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye. We'll end the session now. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.